and welcome to a Greenville County Library System virtual event. Tonight's genealogy virtual drop-in is presented by Ashley from the Simpsonville branch. This evening she'll be taking questions. Either you can jump in, unmuting yourself, or you can put your questions in the chat. We hope you enjoy this program.
All right, so does anyone have any questions about any genealogy questions that you have or problems that you've run into in your research, anything that we can help with today? Yeah, so good question. How to use Ancestry. So the best way to access that is through the library website, and I'm going to grab a link straight to the way to access that there. So on the library website, there is, we have all sorts of online resources, and you can access it there. And all you need is your library card number and PIN. And from there, you can sign on to Ancestry. And it is a little bit limited. It's not the full Ancestry. You can't create your own tree on there, but you can research all records. You can access international records, and you can save them to your computer, flash drive, or other device from there.
So if you already have a ancestry tree established, can you put the information directly into that tree?
Unfortunately not, because the library subscribes to the library subscription. You're technically signed on as the library when you're accessing Ancestry through our site. And it does not allow you to add to any existing trees or to create any new ones.
Okay, thank you. So, do you mind describing just briefly what is available online?
Yeah. As far as just all the different things you can get to for different genealogy things, are you talking about just Ancestry or just in general?
Just in general, what besides, I'm familiar with Ancestry, or at least it's been about 5 years since I've used it, but what other?
Yeah. So there's all kinds of things, especially free resources. Ancestry is great because it kind of serves as a home base for a lot of different databases for things that share their information with Ancestry, but that does come at a cost. Most of that information is also available from original sources and available for free. So some of my favorite online resources are, let's see, I like to use Family Search. That's run by the Church of Latter-day Saints. And they have all kinds of vital records, land records, military records, just like Ancestry, but just set up a little bit different. Fold 3 is great for government documents and military records. Heritage Quest is run by Ancestry, and that one is just for census data and local histories. So that's a free one that you can access from home. There's also really great databases of historic newspapers. So these are fantastic if you're searching obituaries, if you want to look for like any sort of newspaper article, like especially for the history of an area, or if you're looking for a specific like a feature on like the marriages section or the obituaries, death notices, different newspaper articles that would apply to genealogy. Those you can access for free as well. And then you break into a lot of the things that I use will be, I'll look into county records, land records you can access. Sometimes you can find, let's see, probate records through court. Another good resource is findagrave.com, and that's where people have gone in and cataloged entire cemeteries. And you can find a lot of things there to tie relatives together and find more information about a person, even if it's just a starting point. to find more records. So yeah, findagrave.com. I'm putting that in the chat. That is a wonderful resource. So yeah, there's all sorts of things you can find online now.
Ashley, I have a question. Right now on the library, ancestry.com says you have to be in the library to access it. Is that going to remain that way? Because I think I accessed it for like 3 days one time, and then the next time I went back in, it said you had to come into the library. Is that going to remain that way?
So they have been really great about extending that for us for the at-home access. The last I heard, it's definitely available through the end of August, and I wouldn't be surprised if they continue extending that.
Oh, so even though it says you have to go inside the library, you can actually link it?
Right.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you click that, it should prompt you to enter in your library card number and PIN, and that would get you in. I can check and see if I can find more updated information about
Okay.
access on that. They might discuss that at the next Family History Club virtual program, because that'll be towards the end of that extension date right now.
Okay. I'll just go ahead and try it then. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. And accessing the full site. So the only subscription that we have is the library subscription. So that does not include the full access. Even if you are inside the library, I saw a question in the chat. So it is a little bit limited, but you do have access. You can see all the records and everything. So it is better than nothing. Okay, next question. What are the best resources for family history? Ooh, good question about resources for family history research in other countries. It depends entirely on the country. If you're looking at something like British records, British, Scottish, Irish records, a lot of those are online. Canadian records are online. And I always search for that country's National Archive. So that's a really good starting point. And they usually have guides on those websites to walk you through the process of finding documents, whether there's an online database that you can search or if you have to make a request for a record. Resources about immigration to the US. Ancestry is a really good place to start for that. They have a fantastic immigration collection. Let me see what else. Let's see. Yeah, Ancestry is the first place I would go for immigration records, just because they have the most extensive collection. But I'm sure that, again, if you're looking for immigration history from a specific country to the US, you might find on other sites. I know if you know somebody came through Ellis Island specifically, they have a whole site dedicated just to that, that you can access for free. So there's lots of options for that, but I would start with Ancestry. Okay, does anybody else have questions? Anything at all?
I have a question. I have an ancestor that I've been able to find a lot of history on from where he came from in Massachusetts, born in Hawaii, and all of his family was from the Massachusetts area. And then all of a sudden, the next time I found him, he was in Chicago, which is where I'm from. And I just need a couple suggestions of how I could find out how that happened.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would almost be tempted to start with city directories. You might find that they had a specific business that they were a part of.
They were whalers.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I would look for, if you have census records that have them, you said in Massachusetts, right?
Yes.
I would look at those census records, look at the names of their neighbors in those census records and compare it to their neighbors in Chicago. Sometimes people moved in groups for different reasons. It may have been that there was a there was a reason that they moved together for something, or if there was a relative who had already moved, a distant cousin, something like that, who had found a new opportunity, or if they needed to assist a family member who was sick or something like that, and just ended up staying. Um,
Hmm.
Good question.
Okay.
What year do you know about what time frame that was?
He was born in 1858, I believe. And then the next time I saw something about him, he was married. So I'm thinking maybe he met somebody back in Massachusetts, and her family might have been from Chicago. So now I'm answering my own question. I need to look into her family
Yep.
more, but he was in his, let's see, 60, that would have been, he was in his probably 20s or so when he surfaced in Chicago.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be a good that would be a really good starting point. Research her family.
Mm-hmm.
Find that. Chicago was a business area even then. So that might have been a draw. Let's see. So you said he was born in 1858, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. When was the Okay. So they were there. I was checking to see when the Chicago World's Fair was. So they were there before, before the World's Fair, and business had started booming not long before that. So it's very possible that he moved for business reasons.
Yeah, he had a big job. He was a laundry wagon driver.
Oh,
Kidding. I'm gonna write down World's Fair too, or that's
yeah, because that was 1893. So he would have been there for some amount of time before that. But that would be a good place to start. So yeah, I would say city directories, which you can find on Ancestry, you can find on Heritage Quest, which is another one of our resources. And you can also check, I'm sure Chicago has a very robust online genealogy resource on their website. So you can also check the Chicago Library and see what kinds of records they might have available on their website specifically.
okay. Thanks. Good ideas.
Yeah. All right, let's see what other questions we've got. Okay, Ellis Island records on Ancestry, or is there a separate site? Let me do a search. I'm pretty sure that I found Ellis Island. Okay, yeah, so the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation has a database where you can search, and it looks like it's records from 1820 to 1957 for passengers arriving to the Port of New York. So that sounds like it would be a very good website. I'm going to put that here. Let's see. So that's a very good question. Let's see. Finding information on prison records from the early 1900s, found ancestors' mugshot from a California prison in the 1910s through 30s, don't know what he was arrested for. That is a very interesting question. Okay, so prison records, those, it depends on location. So California, so it depends on what they might have made available. I'm not sure if you found a mugshot 1910s, 30s, it's possible they would have digitized those records by now, like prison, like arrest records, court records. If he spent time in prison, then he would have been, probably would have a court record somewhere. So I would search that county, whatever county he was in. I would search for prison records. I would search for court records from that county. So if you had a specific county, say you were looking for, let's see. Okay, so the California State Archives have resources, including, let's see, what all do they have? This is county records, military prison records, 1850 to 1979. So that would be Let me see if I can get this link to copy. There it goes. Okay, so if you were ever looking for prison records or court records, the state or county archives is the place to go. Yeah, any other questions?
I have another one. Do the other, you said you're in Simpsonville?
Mhm.
Do the other branches have the, what's it called? Heritage Club? Heritage Club? No,
Just the Family History Club or
Family History Club, do you know?
I think right now, Simpsonville, as far as I know, I'm the only branch staff member who's doing programs, genealogy programs right now. The main library staff are doing the bulk of these programs for right now.
Okay, well, I'm actually in Easley, so I thought if, some of the other branches did it, maybe Pickens County might too, so I'll look that up. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the new, a new resource that we just added, was it last month? I think it was last month, is the Heritage Hub resource. And that is specifically for, let's see, Heritage Hub is specifically for searching obituaries and death notices from 1704 to today. So it's really amazing. I was actually able to use that resource to locate obituaries of ancestors who died in the early 1800s, which is really fantastic because they lived in rural Maine. So I didn't think there was any chance of, finding a write-up about them. But sure enough, there were obituaries printed in Philadelphia and Boston. So at that point, if you're researching ancestors who lived in the late 1700s into the mid 1800s, if you were looking for obituaries or death notices, don't just look where that person lived. You can also extend your search to include newspapers in larger cities, wherever the nearest large city would be, that would have a large newspaper that would have wide circulation, just to check and see if they show up on the death notices page, which would have been printed for legal reasons, for probate court, that kind of thing. And death notices are very, very short, or you might find longer obituaries to give you more information about that person. So Heritage Hub is a new favorite resource of mine. Also, if anyone has a chance to visit the main library in downtown Greenville, they have just reopened the South Carolina room to walk-in visitors. Up to about last week, it was limited to 1 hour appointments that were made ahead of time just to ensure social distancing and everything. But those occupancy limits have been released. So you can still make an appointment if you need help with a specific topic, or you can just walk in and take a look at their awesome resources. I went back myself last weekend just to see, remind myself what they had and everything. And there's so many amazing things that they have in their print and microfilm collections that have not been digitized yet. That is definitely worth a visit. Let's see, birth notices. Okay, birth notices are not included in the Heritage Hub database. You can find birth notices in other newspaper databases. We have newspapers.com and 19th century US newspapers. Those would also give you access. Those would have everything from birth, marriage, and death notices that were printed. So I would recommend those two, specifically the 19th century US newspapers. If the record you're looking for falls into the 1800s, that would be a good place to start.
I've got a quick question. Do you know the latest US Census data that is available?
Yeah, right now the latest census available is 1940. They are kept, I believe it's a 72-year gap when 1950 census be released. So next April is when we'll get to see the 1950 census. So that is a very exciting point. But keep in mind that when they release those records, because I remember when the 1941 was released and I thought everything would be indexed, it was not. Volunteers will index those as it's released. And I believe they upload it, I want to say county by county. So it's not all going to be available immediately. You might give it till the end of that month or into May. And what you'll be able to start with is before it's indexed, you'll be able to view the full census, narrow it down by state, then county, and then city. And you literally go through page by page until they finally get it indexed, which does take some time.
One more question, please. Do you know offhand if, say, for instance, I was looking for the copies of military discharge papers for ancestors?
Mhm.
Is that available somewhere? Do you know?
It depends on the point at which they were discharged. I know I have seen on Fold 3, which is a subset of Ancestry.com. That includes, I believe that includes military records. I'm going to double check that. Or discharge records. Let's see. Fold 3. But yeah, it does depend on which war you're looking for. Let me see. See, they have service records. Okay, so I see on Fold 3 they have British military discharge records, certificates, and miscellaneous records of the regular Army, 1792 to 1815. It looks like those are all UK records. Let me see what they've got on Ancestry itself. See, military. Okay, so I'm not seeing, that's interesting. I'm not seeing anything for discharge papers, but you can find, I would almost start looking, if you can't find the discharge records, I would start with the pensions, because those, I believe those list like discharge status, like the reason for leaving might be found in the pension records. And those can be searched on both Ancestry and Fold 3. See, and I see a question here about a closed adoption. Ooh, very interesting. Okay. I don't know about adoption records. I'm not sure if adoption records are, I'm not sure if that is something that is controlled federally or on a state level. How to access. Okay, so that's actually a county level thing. So you would go to the county of the adoption where it took place and contact their county clerk to find out their specific rules. You might have to file a petition to review that record. So that is a very interesting source, and I don't know what information might be contained in a closed adoption file. I imagine it depends on when the adoption took place, but yeah, it looks like you would go to the county clerk of the county where the adoption happened. That's a very good question. And let's see, good resources for researching Italian records. Let's see what we can find. I know Ancestry has some international records. Let me see what they have for Italy. And it might depend on how far back you're looking. That's with a lot of international records, that's really what changes things. Let's see. So it looks like they have some church records. They have a Find a Grave Index. They have civil registration records, and I'm not sure what all that would contain. for the different states. So that might be where I would start. Now, the thing to remember with international records is that they may not come with a transcription in English. So you might want Google Translate pulled up at the same time while you're looking at those records so you can figure out what is happening with those. But it looks like most of these records that are available on Ancestry go from about the mid 1800s to the mid 1900s. So it's a pretty specific timeline there. There are a few older records, but those are mostly cemetery indexes. So let's see what else we can find outside of Ancestry. Okay, so according to ItalyHeritage.com, let's see what they tell us. Okay, so it looks like it's very important to know the region or province where someone lived, because the types of records that were kept changed depending on where they lived. Let's see. So I'm going to add a link here. This is one option. Let's see what else we can find. Oh, Family Search has created a whole little site here on how to research these records. That's very helpful because Family Search is a highly reputable organization and they keep things updated. So that would be a good place to start. And it looks like they have some translation tools as well, which would be very helpful.
Ashley, I'm sorry. This is Terry Daly. I just joined. I have a question, but I hate to jump in here if nobody else has a question since I just signed in.
Oh, you're fine. What's your question?
All right, so I'm having a problem with tracing my great-grandfather. The best I can tell is that he was born in Indiana and he died in Kentucky, and also found him in a census in Missouri. But I don't have any physical proof or documented proof that the person that was born in Indiana is in fact the same person that I know died in Kentucky. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so what I was trying to do was to find a marriage license with my known grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not able to find that. And it would have been his third marriage, her first.
Okay.
And
Do you know about what year they were married?
so he fought in the Civil War.
Mhm.
He got discharged from the Army in late 63. And then he appears in the census married to my grandmother in 1870. So somewhere in that time period from 64, we'll say, to 1869, they must have gotten married. They had a child in 1869, their first. And the other piece that you would need to know is through city directories, we've traced him to Illinois from after he got out of the Civil War. And somehow they must have met in Illinois and then for some reason moved to Missouri. So don't know how they met, don't know where they met, just in the broad general state.
Okay. All right. let's see. So he served in the Civil War. Was he Union or Confederate? I imagine he would have been Union, right?
He was a Union soldier, yes.
Okay. I would start with, on fold 3, I would start with pension records. Did she survive him?
So she did survive him by many years, but they never seemed to file for pension.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, he was only in the Union Army for about 6 months, and then he got discharged due to an illness, which about half of his company ended up getting discharged for that. That's a whole nother story.
Let's see. Did he receive any land grants or anything for his service?
Not the best that we can tell now.
Okay. Going the next generation down, have you found, you said that was great-grandfather?
So yeah, that's my great grandfather.
Have you found a death certificate for your grandfather, the next generation down?
Yes.
Okay, does that specify? I know sometimes the death certificates will specify the birthplace of both parents. Does that give any information?
So this is interesting. So we know who all of his siblings are, and there's conflict between the various kids, mainly not so much from the death certificates as from the census records, as to which state their father was born in. The older kids seem to indicate Indiana, the younger kids indicate Kentucky. A lot of that.
So is that related to, I know those states share a little bit of a border. Is it possible that the shape of the state changed?
So his father was actually, if we're tracing this right, was actually an original landowner in the state of Indiana. And they started in Kentucky, migrated as a part of the pioneering phase, migrated into Indiana, were original landowners. And then my grandmother came from Kentucky, and we suspect that they fell on hard times and moved back from Missouri to Kentucky, where she was from, and then ended up farming and living and dying in Kentucky. So then we can trace all the names and you know why we think this is the right link is his name is Nathaniel Henry. He went by NH, and he was a saddler, not a common occupation.
Mm-hmm.
And everything matches, you know, in terms of that's what he is when he goes off to the Civil War. That's what he is when he's reporting on the census in Missouri, what he is when he's a census in Kentucky. But outside of that, I don't have firm proof that ties the guy from born in Indiana to the guy that dies in Kentucky.
That's tough. Sounds like you've already kind of researched sideways. I was going to say you might have to research sideways to find out, you know, on his same peer level to find that answer with relatives. I'm trying to think if it would, like, it wouldn't show up in a will. It probably wouldn't show up in a will for any reason. I mean, right now it could be that you have to rely on that circumstantial evidence. It sounds like it's a pretty strong case that it's the same person with that specific name and occupation. It sounds like it's a pretty strong case. If they're not the same person, then odds are they're very closely related, cousins or something like that. Yeah, that gets difficult there. And you said the other record you were looking for was a marriage record?
Yeah, I thought that if I could tie when they got married,
Mm-hmm.
then I should be able to, you know, accurately show how they hooked up and how they got there and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And you said they show as married on the 1870 census.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a tough era to track down.
Tell me about it.
Okay. You said it was Missouri, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to check and see when Missouri started recording like official records. I mean, of course, at that time the country was in such upheaval that
Hey.
records might have gotten lost at some point.
And I know Indiana didn't even start requiring records until like the 1870s or 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois got populated after Indiana did, so I'm assuming their records are even another 10 years later. And that's what we know that generally people got married in the woman's home county or community. So we were guessing that they probably got married in Illinois, but we have no clue and haven't been able to find any real marriage records in the state of Illinois.
The only other thing that I would say to look for, and it's hard if you can't tack down a county, would be church records.
Yeah.
It's a real long shot, but you might find it. I don't know. You might have to contact their state archive, state historical societies, things like that. See what kind of church records might be available. I don't know if at that time, if it would have been more likely for them to have been going to an established like church building, if there was a traveling minister who may have been performing weddings. Because that's the other thing is that, if it was a traveling minister, you might not find something unless you found who that minister was. The only other thing would be you said they didn't claim a pension. One time I found a pension record where the widow had to find witnesses to testify that they were at her wedding. So if there's any sort of court testimony that would have required witnesses who knew both parties for any reason, that might be a place to look because they would identify the name of the minister who married them. But that's a real long shot.
Yeah. It's his brother, or who we believe to be his brother, has a quite extensive pension record with, like you're saying, a lot of witnesses, a lot of letters supporting, that he was in fact, injured and or served in the military, but nothing on him, which we're really surprised.
The only other thing that I would say to look for would be if you know where they settled after they were married.
Yes.
You go to like Google Books and look for books about that specific city or county or even that part of the state. If they were some of like the first people to move there, or if they were like known, if he was a saddle maker, it could be that he's named in a book as being like, oh, and the town saddle maker was XYZ and he came from this area, or there might be some story about them if they were in a relatively newly populated area.
Gotcha. Yeah, we understand that they settled in Mexico, Missouri, which was at the time frontier, about as big of a frontier area as you could get. It was like the last settling point before things were no longer settled at the time.
Okay, in that case, I would look for firsthand. A lot of people at that time. It later became more popular to publish records of diaries and journals that people kept as they were pioneering those areas, and they would have been highly personal books that people kept. So you might strike gold with someone else who lived in that area who may have traveled with them. if they wrote about them at the time. That might be a source.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I hate to take up so much of everybody's time here, but it's been a real struggle trying to finalize this connection here.
Yeah. Once you think you have that connection, trying to get that proof is difficult.
Right. And we've been able to go back a couple other generations on the Indiana line. But and as a matter of fact, we're going to the State Archives of Kentucky next week to try to better understand or trace back to my fourth great grandfather and see whether he was born in the States or not.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Just my sister and I kind of got into this tracing, and so far we've shown where on my mother's side we came over in 1630, which is just a little bit after the Mayflower, but we're trying to see how far back my father's line goes.
Very cool. All right, so we still have a few more minutes here. Does anyone else have any questions?
Okay, so here's my question. As I wrote a note on the side there, I've been looking for my Polish heritage.
Ooh.
And so the records in Poland, I'm not sure if they're frozen or exactly what the problem is, but there's very little. And as I had asked whether or not the library system has all the features, including the worldwide features of Ancestry.com online. And somebody replied that you are allowing folks to use the library system at home now.
Yes. Yeah, so for right now, Ancestry has very generously extended their at-home availability. So that is something that you can access from home. Let's see. So I went through the library to get to Ancestry, and I pulled up the card catalog. So if you go under the search tab on Ancestry, and it's the bottom option of card catalog, and from there you can filter by location. So you would start with Europe, and then you can narrow it down to Poland. And it looks like they have 256 collections of records that include Polish records. Let's see, it depends on how far back you need to go with it.
Well, right now I'm back to my great great grandfather, and he had a couple of siblings, and so it's been, and Poland, of course, had a terrible history with partitions and the war, and so much stuff was destroyed. It was a terrible situation. But anyway, and then one other thing, I did make a note here when I was looking for my Crabtree side, which is the English side. We went to the funeral home where my grandfather was buried out of, and when the man said, "Oh, that Crabtree, let me look," and so he went to his card file. He had a whole history of all the people that were buried in that town, of that last name, that surname. So that was a good source for us, and he had a card file for everybody that was ever lived in the town. So that might be something to think about for folks.
That's impressive. Yeah.
He had newspaper articles about my grandfather, my great grandfather, and my great grandfather, how they died, where they died, and all that business. So it is quite good. Family Search does a good job as well. So one last question: the newspapers.com, is that available at the library also?
Yes. So we have that one available, and you can access that one from home. Yes, that is one that you can access from home. And as far as I know, it's the full. I believe it is the full collection there, and it's the world collection. So that would be as much access as one could hope for, I think.
Now I just have to learn how to read Polish.
We have some language learning resources that might be helpful, but they're not genealogy specific. But
I've been trying Babbel, and Polish is hard.
mhm. I have found. Let me see if I can find. I have found in the past lists of genealogy terms in specific languages. Let me see if I can find terms, phrases. Okay, yeah. So Family Search has a wonderful resource. It's a genealogical word list that is specifically for Polish, and I imagine they have it for other languages as well. That's what I would start with. Of course, that's, it's not going to be everything that you're going to come across, but it looks like it's the most common thing, and they have notes about grammar, as well as additional resources, encyclopedias and dictionaries, that kind of thing.
Great.
That's really neat.
Of course, one of the problems with the partition was that the eastern Poland, which is where my family is from, they were taken over by Russia. So a lot of the records are in, they call it Cyrillic, the Russian language. So that's, they don't even have our alphabet, so I can't even figure out anything from those.
Yeah, that's where it gets difficult. A lot of times we get questions about researching internationally where borders have changed. And I'm sure that's some of the most difficult thing, because you can never know when, where exactly those records landed, if those records still exist, what language they might have been kept in. Was it kept in the native language? Was it kept in the then conquering country's language? It just changes over time, and it depends on where you're looking at. So I can imagine how difficult that is. All right, do we have any other questions? Okay. We have one in chat. What would you recommend if you're not American, boyfriend is Korean, and his family is all in South Korea? Ooh, okay. Let's see what kinds of records they have. Yeah, because Ancestry only has 5 collections right now, for Korean records, or South Korean records specifically. And one of those is a newspaper from the 40s, so that's not terribly helpful. Let's see. All right. Family Search recommends. Okay, they are kept on the local level, so by jurisdiction. That's interesting. So you might have to search by that. I guess it depends on where exactly they were living. I'm going to paste this into the chat. That would be a good place to start. But it looks like they do have a good number of record types available, which is a very good thing. As well as information on the background of the area, how things have changed over time, as far as places and customs. So that's very good. Okay. Oh, and we need to get that newspaper.com link. Okay. That is a very good question. I have not done any work on researching genealogy in Asian countries yet, so I'm not terribly familiar with it. And then if that Korean genealogy goes into North Korea, Family Search also has a page specifically on researching that. I imagine that would be more difficult, but you never know. So yeah, that is a very interesting question. The other thing you might do is contact, contact any community groups that are like Korean social groups or anything. If you can visit one of those groups and connect with somebody in the group who might have experience researching Korean genealogy records. It's worth asking, and they might have firsthand information about how to go about that. All right, we have time, I think, for one more question.
Let me press the button here. Does the LDS have any kind of facility here in Greenville County? The
Yeah.
Latter-day Saints?
Yeah, they have. Now, I'm not sure what their hours are, but they have one. It is on, I believe it's on Boiling Springs Road, very close to Pelham Road. Let me see what I can find, because we had some folks visit over there when we were doing genealogy drop-in at Pelham. Let's see. Yes, the Greenville History Center. Okay, so that I'm going to add a link here to their page on the Family Search website. And they have all the contact information there. If this is current, then their operating hours are 7 to 8:30 p.m. on Tuesdays and 7 to 8:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, but you can also make an appointment for other times that are more convenient for you. It says they're closed during the month of July. So I'm assuming that this is fairly current, but you might still be able to contact them. I see an email address here. So it looks like you can still contact them.
And are your folks, there folks at the library that are helpful as well?
So at the
GLS, at Greenville County Library.
Yeah. So if you want, we have specialist librarians in the South Carolina room located at the main library downtown. So yeah, those, they're highly trained, know what they're looking for, and can help you get started on all sorts of questions.
Great. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks so much to everyone for joining us on our virtual program. The next genealogy program that the library has coming up is a Family History Club, a virtual Family History Club event, and that is going to be next month on, I know it's towards the end of the month. Let's get that. So the next Family History Club is on August 26th. And that's 4 to 5 in the afternoon, and you can register for that. I'm going to include the link for signing up for our next virtual program. And then we don't have another genealogy drop-in on the calendar yet, but I will get that up as soon as possible. So yeah, oh, and I'm going to include let me get the contact information. If you need to contact South Carolina Room staff by email, they can be contacted at this email address. You can email or call them with any questions that you have, and their staff will be happy to answer. I'm here at the Simpsonville branch, and if you come by and have a question, I'll do what I can to help. But I will say the South Carolina Room staff are more trained, and they do have a few more resources at their fingertips. So yeah, thank you all for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next time.